18 minutes now after 12 o'clock. It's hard to live up to the reputation of the perfect family Christmas. Lots of holiday movies manage to do it, showing us loving families brought together around a magnificent Christmas dinner, and even where there is stress or family conflicts, they're all sorted out in the end. Reality, of course, is very different. Mix together debt, too much alcohol, and family members you can't stand, and you have a recipe for disaster. So today, we're looking at how to cope with Christmas. Do you wish it was just all over? Is this a time of year when you feel overwhelmed with stress? We want to hear your stories of Christmases that didn't go so well. You can call now, 1-800-565-1940. Our email is marnoon@cbc.ca, and we're on Twitter @CBC Maritime Noon. My guest today is clinical psychologist Simon Sherry. He's also a professor in the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at Dalhousie University. Hi, Simon. Welcome to Maritime Noon.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, how stressful is Christmas?
If you look at available evidence, a lot of people feel hassled, stressed, pressured, anxious, and overloaded at this time of year.
You know, we were talking about movies. If you look at the classic Christmas Vacation, that is sort of the epitome of Christmases gone wrong. The tree blows up, the turkey's destroyed. Is that kind of the level of stress that people experience?
I think that a lot of it pivots on family. If you look at what people are telling us when asked about their holiday experience, they'll list the best of Christmas as family, and they'll also list the worst of Christmas as family. So it seems like getting that family piece is very important.
So it's sort of that polarizing thing. You can love them or...
Family's pivotal when it comes to Christmas. I also think another real challenge for the sort of version of Christmas that circulated in 2018 is so much emphasis on material abundance. We've really commercialized Christmas, and there's a lot of pressure put on the giving and receiving of gifts.
I know my family decided to pare down at Christmas. Everybody used to give each other a gift, and now we just do a secret Santa draw. So we're just giving one gift to one person, which makes shopping a whole lot faster. Do you find a lot of families now are starting to adapt and starting to change because of that?
Well, I'm glad to hear you pushing back against the over-commercialization of Christmas. When you look at people who are saying they're enjoying Christmas, they're often religious Christians who enjoy the Christmas. They're often people who put emphasis on experiences as opposed to things, and the commodification and exchange of things. And they're often people who put greater emphasis on family as opposed to buying.
Now, we do have some comments on Facebook. Karen Campbell Green wrote, "I'm under stress every day, but at this time of year, it's 120 times worse."
I'm not surprised to hear that at all. In fact, if you look at some data on human health, there's a spike in heart attacks over the holiday season, and that's a robust and replicable finding that showed up in a number of studies at this point. So it seems like all that stress and paired with overindulgence may very well culminate in heart difficulties for humans over the holidays.
Okay, well, we want to hear your stories of how you cope with this time of year and how do you make the best of Christmas. You can call now 1-800-565-1940 or email your thoughts at marnoon@cbc.ca. Simon, no other holiday during the year seems to carry as much pressure to be perfect as Christmas. Why do you think that is?
I think one thing is that Christmas is ubiquitous. April 24th, 2019 marks Secretary Day. You can avoid Secretary Day if you want. Christmas, however, is omnipresent. It's on the radio, it's on the television, it's in decorations, it's in conversations. It's almost inescapable. And so if it's not a holiday you enjoy, or if it's a holiday associated with bad experiences, you're inundated with cues and prompts and triggers and reminders everywhere you go.
We've also heard from Michael Richard Murphy on Facebook. He writes, he avoids Christmas as much as he can. I'm not going to do anything Christmas Day because I don't want to deal with my crazy lady aunt. So that kind of touches back on your idea of family being the good and the bad.
That's right. And what Christmas often does is it creates forced proximity to people you wouldn't otherwise spend time around. In our day-to-day lives, oftentimes we affiliate with people who have similar attitudes or similar beliefs, and birds of a feather flock together. But over Christmas, you often get together with people you probably wouldn't otherwise spend several hours with, and that presents its own challenges.
Do you think in this current political climate that's kind of emphasizing the differences between family members?
I think there could be some animated political discussions over the holidays. I think you also have to be realistic when it comes to your expectations around Christmas. If for the last 15 years your uncle has sounded like Donald Trump over Christmas dinner, he's likely to repeat that. And I think that's where this idealized version of Christmas gets us into trouble, because it primes these lofty expectations of Christmas harmony, and then inevitably the reality falls short, and people feel that discrepancy, the gap between this ideal Christmas they're supposed to have and then their actual Christmas, which is almost inevitably disappointing in comparison.
What about you yourself? Have you had Christmases go awry?
I have a 9-year-old son, and since he's come into my world, Christmas has gotten a lot better. He brings joy and spirit and energy and happiness. I would have to say, though, before his arrival, the adults-only Christmas was rather dull and involved a lot of tedium. So I'm very grateful for the energy and the joy he's brought to Christmas.
And how do you deal with avoiding the stress and making sure it's a good time for the family?
I think that you really have to, in addition to be realistic, focus on yourself. It's very difficult to control family members. It's very difficult to control anyone other than yourself. But focus on yourself and try and be a good contributor to Christmas. I think that's important to all this. You can play your assigned part well in Christmas. I think Christmas is a time of overindulgence, both in terms of dietary choices and the consumption of various substances. It's probably helpful to keep your blood alcohol level reasonably low as you manage the stress of Christmas. I think sometimes, too, that people have to scramble up patterns that have become routinized and dull and try and shake things up. If your Christmas habits aren't working, try something different, as it sounds like you did within your own family.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you want to tell us how you have changed Christmas, you can reach us at 1-800-565-1940, or you can send your stories through our email address, marnoon@cbc.ca. We have our first email of the day. It's from Karen Foster. She writes, as a teenager, I got really picky about presents. I made such a specific list, and my poor mom was so used to me being a disappointed jerk that she just handed me money and told me to buy my own presents, wrap them, and put them under the tree. I was thrilled until Christmas morning, when I opened the stuff I already knew about, and the meaning of Christmas, the gift-giving part anyways, hit me smack in the face. The point is to be surprised, to see what you mean to your loved ones. The point is for people to try to give each other things or experiences they wouldn't get for themselves. That was the best lesson. It really is the thought that counts. And also, don't be a jerk to your mom. That is an email from Karen Foster in Dartmouth this afternoon. Thanks for that, Karen. And what do you think of that lesson that Karen learned?
I think it's a very well expressed email, and yes, don't be a jerk to your mom or your dad. I think part of enjoying Christmas may also be giving up control, renouncing any desire to have perfect outcomes or to control those around you, to have them be perfect in the service of your ideal Christmas. I think part of just relaxing your standards, giving up control, and enjoying things like a surprise is an important part.
We received another Facebook comment from Wendy Jean. She said she made eggs Benny casserole and it was disgusting. So then she made the traditional eggs Benny, but she only had enough eggs for one person. So her teenage son was not impressed. And that kind of goes to the idea of going over the top with meals and trying so hard to impress everyone, and then you end up with not such a successful meal.
Well, Christmas is a holiday of overindulgence, both in terms of food and drink. And if you look at evidence in the period between Thanksgiving and New Year's, that's when most of the weight gain among North Americans occurs. So we tend to eat a lot over Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, maybe mix in a birthday or so there, and people are putting on average about 1 kilogram in that time period. Some of us then buckle down in January and lose it, but for a lot of us that remains a part of our waistline going forward.
It's not so great for fitting in those Christmas clothes then.
No, absolutely.
Eat through the holidays. If you don't like Christmas, because we know there's certainly lots of people out there, we were talking about Grinches on the show the other day, is it possible to escape Christmas?
I think it would be very difficult in North America in 2018 to truly escape Christmas. I think if you wanted to, you could be strategic and try and limit your exposure to Christmas, but it's a holiday that's become such a juggernaut, it would be hard to avoid. On the topic of being a Scrooge or a Grinch, I always feel a little bit rough, as if I'm being critical of Christmas. To be clear, some people do really enjoy Christmas, and some people don't. And I'm not sure we can entirely blame Christmas for how we feel in December. For example, there's major changes in the availability of sunlight that affects melatonin production, serotonin production, scrambles people's circadian rhythm, and can lead to a seasonal lowering in mood. We wouldn't blame Christmas for that. If you look at data too, flu often peaks in the Christmas season. We wouldn't necessarily blame Christmas for that. There's a weight gain we've already touched upon, but that's not entirely Christmas's fault. We can throw in Thanksgiving and New Year's related abundance. So we got to be careful not to throw Christmas under the bus too hard.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we're going to head to the phone lines in just a moment. It's now 29 minutes after 12 o'clock, and we want to hear from you. You can call now 1-800-565-1940 or email us, marnoon@cbc.ca. First, we're going to take a break. Sandy Smith is here from the newsroom. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Carolyn. A 45-year-old woman from Miramichi, New Brunswick, has died after a head-on crash in the province earlier today. Police say the car she was driving crossed the centre line and collided with a large truck just after 9 o'clock near Rogersville. In Charlottetown, federal Crown attorneys have stayed charges against a brother and sister accused of immigration fraud in PEI. Yi and Ping Zhang were alleged to have counseled hundreds of people to commit frauds. And the Nova Scotia government is giving extra money to 2 universities. St. FX in Antigonish will receive about $4 million during this fiscal year. King's College in Halifax, $2.2 million. The minister responsible says the money is to stabilize the financial positions of those 2 institutions. Regional news in detail coming up at 1 o'clock.
Okay, thanks so much, Sandy. You're listening to Maritime Noon here on CBC Radio 1. Our number, once again, is 1-800-565-1940. And today, we want to know about your Christmases that haven't gone quite as planned. Do you simplify now? And tell us your tips of how to deal with stress over the holidays. Our first caller today is Eric Patton. He's calling from Kentville. Hi there, Eric.
Hi. Wow, what a great topic. Just something that I hope I'm not stereotyping too much, but this is hopefully more helpful for men, husbands, men in significant relationships, trying to buy gifts for significant other, i.e. a wife or female spouse especially. There have actually been studies done this, that the stress that men feel Christmas shopping, especially in these big stores, is the equivalent to the stress that fighter pilots experience in actual combat. And you go around the stores late, closer to Christmas and see these horrid looks on men's faces. Well, I can identify with trying to find stuff, which we are minimizing more and more and more. The tip that we found really helpful is instead of trying to surprise my dear wife, we've just decided, just give me a list, a few specific things. If it's to do with closing, size, place you get it, actual number, and then from those things, then I'd pick yeah, a few of those things so there would still be a surprise, but not that same kind of trying to figure out what to get. The second thing is, and your guest probably knows this, the 2 days of the year when most relationships break down. Fortunately, this is not a personal thing, but Valentine's Day and the day after Christmas. And so my suggestion would be, if there's a relationship and a lot of issues there, if anybody that wants to save the relationship, deal with the issues before Christmas rather than hanging on and then day after Christmas dropping the bomb. So that's it.
Eric, do you find the shopping aspect to be the toughest part of the season?
It's a very stressful, very, very stressful, yes. But, yes.
Eric, I can certainly empathize with your stress this year for shopping for my spouse. The only directive I got was, I do not want jewelry.
Right.
Well, that was clear.
There you go. Yes.
Well, I don't want to reinforce the stereotype, but there are some men in this office who ask me to do the shopping for them, for their spouses. So I'm not going to name names, but I offer to be their personal shopper. So
there you go. Bless you for that.
So maybe it's ask a friend of your spouse for some tips, definitely, to get through it. But Eric, thank you so much for calling in.
Okay, thanks for doing it.
And Simon, is it really that stressful for some people to find that perfect gift and get out there and do that?
I think that there's so much pressure these days. And one thing I've learned over the last 9 years in reading to my son certain holiday stories, that pressure shows up in Santa's life. I mean, Santa is our secular holiday icon, and the stories about Santa are always themed around giving and receiving gifts, but also stress and pressure and being overloaded. Poor Santa is severely stressed out. He's unhealthy, and then he's overweight, and he often binge eats. So as much as I like Santa, he also embodies the stressfulness many of your callers are representing here today.
There you go. Okay, well, if you want to share your stories of your Christmases that didn't go as planned, call us 1-800-565-1940. Our next caller is Yves Chasson. He's calling from Grand Etang, Cape Breton. Hi there.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. Can you tell us about...
Love your program.
Tell us about your Christmases.
Okay, one Christmas, okay? It was the night before Christmas, and the cats were asleep, and all through the house, maybe the mice were running around. And couldn't hear a thing, except I heard something coming up the stairs. We had 3 bedrooms on the 2nd floor. And I seen my father, and he opened the door to the attic. And he had needed a little bench to get up there. And out comes my little steam shovel that I wanted so bad. The night that I stopped believing in Santa Claus.
Oh, yes. So the night the magic kind of changed for you.
So I realized that maybe eventually later on, I'm 69 years old, I realized that maybe I should change it and start thinking about the birth of Jesus.
There you go, and looking at it a different way, yeah.
To Mary, which was 13 years old when she conceived.
Yeah. Well,
okay, that's all I have
thanks
to say.
for calling in.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Simon, do you think it's a matter for some people of changing their perspective and taking that step back and changing like Yves did?
I think there is something to consider the religious aspect of Christmas. Personally, I'm not religious. That's not my worldview, but I can see merit in emphasizing that worldview around the Christmas holidays. If you look at Christ's doctrine, it was about love. It was not about overindulgence. It was an anti-materialist stance. And that's a pretty sharp contrast to Christmas themed around Santa, which is about commodification and giving and receiving and commercialization. So there are definitely two different worldviews out there. And I kind of get the anti-materialist, put love first, don't overindulge message of Christianity.
Okay. Well, we want to hear your stories. You can call us now, 1-800-565-1940. Our next caller is John Webster. He's on the line. Good afternoon, John.
Top of the day to you.
Hi there. Can you tell us about your Christmas that didn't go as planned?
I will indeed. Years ago, last century as a matter of fact, I found myself in Calgary. It was about 1982, and the economy had just gone right down the tube. Me and 4 other fellas from this neck of the woods ended up splitting on a basement apartment on account of, money being tight and whatnot. Christmas Day found us in there with no shops open and nothing for to eat. We went to the cupboard, and there was a little bit of macaroni in there, like elbow macaroni. We boiled that up. There was a handful each of that. Someone found from a previous tenant in a cupboard a bucket of those potato chips from Halloween, so there's not many in them. We got 1 chip each out of the bag. And to finish off the meal, someone had scarfed a handful of those restaurant mints years ago or ages ago, and we got 1 mint each. But as bad as it all was, we did tell each other stories and jokes and laughed ourselves silly about the terrible situation we were in. So it wasn't like totally hellish.
It definitely, the spirit was there. The enthusiasm was there for you guys.
The spirit was there. The material means somewhat lacking.
And, what did you learn from that experience?
Don't be poor.
Was it at least a good flavor of potato chips if you only got 1?
Oh, my God. I think they were a packet of them old Dutch things, and honest to God, I'd rather eat a bumper off a Dodge.
Okay. So
maybe it was all we had, and we made do with it, eh?
Maybe don't recreate the meal, but that's great. You guys were able to at least have a laugh and still make the most of the holiday.
You know what? I laugh about it to this very day, although I seldom tell the story because I don't want to, spread misery this time of year. But you got a great program there, a great guest. I'm really enjoying it quite a bit.
Okay, thanks so much, John.
Thank you.
Cheerio.
And I like the redeeming feature of that story because it's about togetherness. It's about connection. Materially, obviously, that Christmas was really lacking, but they're a bunch of friends together and connected.
I think most families that have tried to do the big meal have had 1 year at least where the turkey does not quite turn out as planned or the meal isn't quite as planned. So it's a good lesson that at least it's the attempt and it's the family being together. So that was a great story, John. Next on the line, we have Ken McQuarrie. He's calling from Summerside this afternoon. Hi there, Ken.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Excellent. What's all this talk about Christmas being stressful? It's a time to have fun. You got 364 days a year to listen to your spouse and your family about getting gifts that they have no idea what they're getting. Seeing Christmas morning, I think it's the best time of year.
And what do you love so much about it, Ken?
The whole thing: shopping, eating, meeting with friends, playing with games, the whole ball of wax.
And do you have to deal with, do you ever interact with people who aren't so keen on Christmas?
Oh, yeah, I married one.
And what do you do to kind of spread your cheer?
Live life to the fullest.
There you go. Just as simple as that.
Yep. Sorry, gotta go. Have a great day.
Love
nice
it.
to hear from you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Ken.
And there's a nice illustration of a man who knows how to enjoy Christmas. And clearly a lot of people do enjoy Christmas.
And that's right, and it's certainly a mix of emotions around the season. It can be a tough time. Susanna Johnstone actually just wrote in a story. She said her father passed away in January of 2007. So the next Christmas, the year later, could have been a very gloomy one, she writes, as her family was small. There's just 6 of them. She says, we could have been at home noticing that Dad wasn't there to put the tinsel on the tree as he loved to do or peel the potatoes. However, my mom made a very wise choice for herself and all of us that year. She proposed a Christmas in the Dominican Republic. We had never been away for Christmas as a family, and being in a completely different environment allowed us a whole new experience of the holidays. Of course, we still miss Dad, but not the constant and gloomy way we might have at home. I know not everyone has the means to choose a trip like that, but I highly recommend a change of scenery at Christmas as a way to make new memories in the face of a loved one's absence. That's from Susanna Johnstone. Thanks for that email, Susanna. What do you think of that, Simon?
I think it's a great example of being planful and thinking strategically. That may be something we need to do a bit more of around the holidays. And the other key point I'd take from that wonderful example is the idea of disrupting patterns. And so that caller, or rather that writer, very clearly expressed that idea. We've said a lot about how Christmas can compromise health. There's also some evidence that Christmas may have a protective effect on certain problems. For example, our suicide rate goes down over the Christmas season. The amount of self-harm behavior, like cutting yourself, for example, also seems to go down over the holidays. And we also see a decrease in psychiatric admissions. So as much as we're feeling stressed and hassled and overloaded around Christmas, it seems like Christmas and the season has a protective effect on major forms of mental illness.
Is there a sense of, some of the patterns and the routines that family have are what kind of keeps people together and is comforting to people in that situation then?
We're not exactly sure. And there's a complicated relationship, unfortunately, between the Christmas season and the New Year's season. What may actually happen over Christmas is something of a postponement or a deferral, at least when it comes to suicide behaviors. The decrease in Christmas then tends to result in a rebound in the New Year's period, where suicides actually spike in the first few weeks of, in this case, 2019. So there's probably some sort of deferral that may happen, and sometimes people may, in unhelpful ways, delay seeking help around the holiday season as well.
Okay, and certainly if anyone is listening and feeling that way at this time of year, we hope they make some calls and ask for help. Definitely, there's lots of people who will listen at this time of year if they are struggling out there. If you want to tell us your stories of Christmases that have not gone as planned, you can call now, 1-800-565-1940, or send us more of those emails. You can email us at marnoon@cbc.ca. We are now 16 minutes before 1 o'clock, and we're going to head back to the phone lines. Carol Barkus is on the line from Quispamsis. Hi there, Carol.
Hi, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, too. What do you think of the holidays?
They're over-commercialized. They're over everything except the real thing for Christmas. I think it should be about family. I'm remembering way back in the day, we lived on the farm. We made our own Christmas decorations, most of them. We decorated our tree together as a family. We didn't have much, but we didn't have any money, but we had lots of love and friendship. And with me, right now, my grandkids and most of my family, they have everything, so there's nothing that they really need. And so you donate to a worthy cause in honor of them, and which I think is, need in this. But I think Christmas should be, and I know it's not going back to the heyday that I was in, where my grandmother knit her own socks and her mittens, and that was part of every year of her Christmas. But it's just the fact that I think the world would be just a better place if everyone took time to stop and look at their neighbor and what their neighbor might need. And that's the way I feel about it.
And Carol,
and I go, going to church on Christmas. I know going to church, but to me that's just part of the Christmas thing to do, and meet friends and enjoy a cup of apple cider after, and that's just it.
And Carol, when did you guys start making donations instead of giving gifts?
This is me personally.
Yeah.
I started doing that a few years ago.
And did you notice a difference in how you felt heading into Christmas because of that?
Well, I always feel that way. I always feel that we should be helping our down and out person if we can. I'm on a fixed income, so I don't have a big bank account type of thing. But I don't know. That's just my feeling. That was the way I was brought up. Like my dad, he'd go out to pick strawberries from my mom to make jam, and he'd come home with one box instead of two flats. So my mom would say, "Okay, what happened to the rest of the, well, I met so-and-so, and they didn't have much, and a single mom, and that's just the way I was raised. You share with what you have with everybody else.
Simon, I'll get you to weigh in on this. What do you think of that idea?
I think there's a very valuable point in that for all of us. Oftentimes, if you want to feel good about yourself, you should be doing things for other people. And there's really something to be said for making a contribution to others.
Yeah. Carol, thanks so much for calling.
And don't take that. I'm not bragging. Believe me, I'm not.
No, it's a great suggestion.
It's just that's the way I feel.
Great.
Okay, and you guys have a great Christmas.
You too.
Enjoy your program.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay, bye for now.
Darlene Brown has written in. She has a suggestion for those who are worried about gifts. She says, my husband and I have decided to cease exchanging gifts because we were either buying something for ourselves for the other to give to us or give the other one a specific gift idea. So instead, Santa still fills a stocking with fun surprises. So that smaller downscale kind of fun idea. So that is an email from Darlene Brown. Thank you for that tip, Darlene. So that certainly goes back to some of the calls we had earlier of people not too excited about having to find those perfect gifts.
I think there's a useful distinction between buying things and buying experiences. Scientific data would tell us that when people buy things, they're less excited, they're lower in terms of their level of happiness. In contrast, when people buy experiences, it seems to promote their well-being and promote their happiness. They seem to derive greater well-being from the purchase of experiences.
Yeah. Well, we want to hear your stories of how you deal with Christmas and how you make the best of it. You can call now 1-800-565-1940. Our next caller is Ken Chapman in Halifax. Hi there, Ken.
Hi there.
Hi. What do you think of Christmas?
Well, I guess like all men, I find it very stressful.
Very stressful, eh?
Very. But I was just saying when I first called in, I said that a lot of the callers are calling in to say about their stories about how Christmas went wrong. Well, my story is one that went right.
Okay. Well, tell us about it.
My wife, she's from Halifax. Obviously, I'm not. But my wife had lived in Scotland in the early 70s. So she had suggested to me that I make something. She gave me all her old gold rings. Some had diamonds in them and so on. And I went down to a jeweler on Barrington Street, and I got talking to this designer and told her what I wanted to make. So I drew a little map of Scotland, and I said, I want you to melt down all the gold and make it into the shape of Scotland. And my wife had lived in the city of Aberdeen, which is on the east coast of Scotland. I said, put the big diamond there. And these three small diamonds, they were really small, I said, put them in this area here, which is called the Cairngorms, which are the mountains in the Central Highlands of Scotland. So we got that done. It was way beyond my budget, but I knew that this was this was a really good thing to do. So I did it, and on Christmas morning we opened all our presents and so on, and this one was the last one. And my wife has three sons, and her youngest son, my stepson, said to me later, he said, you'll never top that one, Ken. Never.
She just loved it, eh?
And she still treasures it to this day. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. I was fortunate that particular year. But there's been other Christmases when I've done things that were well within my budget, or when I couldn't get out to the shops. Because I remember when I first came to Halifax, I used to go to I think it's called Bears Road, and I'd see these guys walking down through the mall there, and they've got money in their hand, and they've got a facial expression of absolute desperation. They can't put it off anymore. There's no tomorrow. This is Christmas Eve. I've got to do something. I've got to buy my wife something. And you know they have reached the bottom of the barrel when they would walk into the body shop and they'd buy a big plastic bottle of pink stuff and go home and wrap it up.
Hey, some people love that stuff now, Ken.
It's very stressful. It really is, for most men.
Well, thanks for that story. That must have been a great Christmas.
It was. I love your show.
Thanks so much. I just want to read this, Simon, from our Facebook page. Rachel Matthews posted a picture that had tips for surviving Christmas. So number 1, don't go into debt trying to show people how much you love them. Tip number 2, don't go visit your family if it compromises your mental health. And tip number 3, if someone comments on your weight, eat them. So some useful advice there, definitely.
For sure.
And one thing that we haven't talked about, of course, is the financial side of it and the stress of trying to keep up sort of with everybody and impress them. And do you think that really is a big factor when it comes to dealing the stress of Christmas?
Absolutely. If you look at what's stressing people out over the holidays and everyone's top 10 list when a survey occurs, there is that economic, financial pressure, which is a byproduct of the commodification of Christmas.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's another factor we haven't talked about, and it's an email from Gwen McCauley. She's talking about a divorced kid's Christmas. She writes, "My husband had 2 very young daughters when we got together. His agreement with his ex was that she'd always have the kids for Christmas Day. So instead of fighting about it, our agreement was that they came to our place on the eve of Christmas Eve. We made Christmas Eve morning our Christmas Day. I called it Divorced Kids Christmas and had them convinced that Santa had a list of all the divorced kids in the world and made a trip on the night of the 23rd just for them." That's a great story from Gwen McCauley. Thanks for writing that in.
It's absolutely a great story, and more in Canada we have all sorts of diverse organizations of family, and that was a great and creative application of an adapted Christmas.
Yeah, and I'm sure other parents can try that one out as well. I mean, certainly for kids, it's about the spirit, right?
Well, when we get Christmas right, oftentimes there's a routine and a ritual that's positive. And routines and rituals are very important to humans, especially humans in families, because they foster a sense of security and a sense of stability. So on the one hand, the risky bit of routine is it can become painful and monotonous. On the other hand, that does foster closeness and connection among families over the holidays.
Mm-hmm. Well, we want to hear more of these stories. You can call us 1-800-565-1940 or email us marnoon@cbc.ca. Our next caller is Al. He's calling from St. John. Hi there, Al. Al, are you there?
Hello.
Oh, hi there. Al, tell us about a Christmas that didn't go quite as planned.
This is Tommy. Yeah, no, the kids and that, when they were growing up, they got me a big chocolate mousse for Christmas, and I love hunting moose. So anyway, they put it under the tree, and didn't the dog get into it in the night, eh? And after we put the kids to bed, and got the diarrhea.
Oh, jeez.
And you talk about a mess all over the... So that was kind of a Christmas that went bad, eh? But I love the program, and I listened to it quite a bit up here at the camp.
Al, we know chocolate is not good for dogs, but was the dog okay after that?
Yeah, but she was the greatest dog. I really loved that dog, but we never kept it in, only on cold nights. It had its own place outside, but it was down in the basement. Didn't make it into that chocolate mousse, but it was something all over the present.
Well, that's certainly memorable. You'll never forget that gift.
No, for sure.
Thanks for calling, Al.
Okay, love you. Yep, bye-bye now.
Okay, and we're going to try and squeeze in one more caller. Lynn McClellan is on the line from Wellington. Hi there, Lynn.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks. What do you think of Christmas?
Oh, we really enjoy Christmas here. My husband is a Christmas nut. He plays Christmas music all year long, drives the rest of us crazy. We have decided, we're married 40 years, we have decided only to do stockings also. It takes away lots of pressure, gives to the grandchildren. One funny story, though, was when I was having a friend a newly met friend I had for Christmas dinner because they didn't have their children at Christmas. My mother was here. She makes the best gravy. And she said, "Do you want me to make the gravy with flour or cornstarch?" And I said, "I really don't care." So I reached up into the cupboard and I pulled out a package and I gave it to her, and all of a sudden the gravy exploded. It was baking soda instead of cornstarch. So Wow. It blew up all over the stove. So we quickly put it out on the deck, and luckily enough, there was a neighborhood store open that we could buy some canned gravy. And my friend came up, who is a really good cook, and was like, "Why is your gravy outside on your deck?" But the best story for me, and I'll make it really quick because I think you're probably running out of time, is that I was expecting my second child on December the 27th. My family's from Cape Breton. We always went there for Christmas. Well, obviously, I couldn't go there that Christmas. So I invited a few neighbors in, not realizing that it turned into 36 years later, we were still having a Christmas Eve party, only instead of 6 people, it has turned into all their friends. Their friends have gone to university. Their friends who would come home and only see each other during the holidays. And those children would email me and ask me if I was having a Christmas party, because sometimes it was the only time they would see their friends. So my house is not that big, but we've squeezed as many as 70 in here, and they just keep coming every year. So it's something that we really look forward to.
Oh, wow. That's great. Well, thanks so much for calling, Lynn.
Okay. Have a Merry Christmas to everybody at CBC.
You too.
Bye.
And Simon, we're out of time, but thanks so much for coming in today and talking about this.
It's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate the invite.
And I hope your gravy doesn't explode this Christmas.
As do I.
Okay, thanks so much. That was clinical psychologist Simon Sherry, and you can still share your stories of Christmases that you'd rather forget. 1-800-565-5463 or email us marnoon@cbc.ca.